Right. I want to ask you about ISIS, first of all. Who created ISIS, and what role did the federal government, or at least the spy apparatus of the federal government, have in creating ISIS?
Well, we're very fortunate to have it directly from Vice President Joe Biden, speaking at Harvard University Kennedy School of Government last Friday, where he pointed out that ISIS was created, essentially funded and promoted by three countries that he mentioned: Saudi Arabia, the money; Turkey, the border, the logistics, other help; and the United Arab Emirates, the so-called Emiratis, also for money and political support and so forth. And he went through the idea that these countries, and I think we can see it's a little bit broader. It includes places like Kuwait that should still be overflowing with gratitude towards us for having reinstalled that dynasty on their throne back more than 20 years ago, and others, right, the different ones in the Gulf, right? Let's say the reactionary Gulf monarchies. All of those countries were so obsessed with the idea of overthrowing Bashar Assad, the secular and relatively modern government of Syria. They were so fixated on overthrowing Assad that they funded, as Biden put it, Al-Qaeda, which is already enough, and this Nusra, which is a branch of Al-Qaeda. So what we're talking about is the Siamese twins, the precursors and friends and alter egos of ISIS. And, of course, the Turkish president had freaked out. Erdogan of Turkey, right, who thinks that he actually thinks that he's going to be the caliph. He wants to be the sultan of a new Ottoman empire, and if he's that, then I guess he's also the caliph. But he uses ISIS and the caliphate, which is what they've declared, to try to attack his enemies. So he freaked out saying, "How dare you say this? I want an apology. You take that back." Then he said, "No armed person has ever gone across the border from Turkey to Syria." I think, that's about 500 miles of border. So I think you can realize how ridiculous, how absurd such a statement is. So, and then, of course, Biden did apologize, which is crazy. But Biden has told us some truth. And I've just been listening to the Sunday radio talk shows, and they don't say anything about this interesting outburst by Biden. I think he went off the reservation. He threw away the script. I don't know why. He does that from time to time. I'm not sure whether it's, a carefully calculated statement, a warning to Saudi Arabia or a warning to Turkey. It could be those things too, but we'll have to wait and see. But as of right now, we know that the rebellion, the insurrection in Syria is not indigenous, it's not grassroots, it's artificial, it comes from outside, it comes from the Saudi monarchy, the Emirates, who are a group of emirs, right, or little kings or princes, and this Turkish regime of Erdogan, which is very close to the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, I'm afraid that Senator Biden left out, Vice President Biden left out one important fact, was that the CIA, of course, orchestrated much of this, right? We knew years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that there were CIA managers sort of routing the equipment and the fighters that came into southern Turkey, some of them at NATO bases, and sending them into northern Syria. And a lot of the people that are fighting in Syria today are the same ones who were fighting for NATO against Colonel Gaddafi in Libya in 2011. And they were then massively transshipped into Turkey and Syria. And, of course, Benghazi is rooted in that. The Benghazi incident was that Ambassador Stevens, in his last meeting on this earth, was meeting with the Turkish consul in Benghazi. So from the main area of terrorism and terrorists in Libya, he was shifting these fighters over into Turkey, and he was working out the details with a Turkish diplomatic representative. So I think we now know, if we just add in the last part of what I've said, what this is.
Yeah, but mainstream media doesn't bother to tell us that. If you will hold on for a second, we need to take this first break of the hour. We'll be right back with more from Dr. Webster Tarpley. KDK Radio News Time 419. Dr. Webster Tarpley is our guest. He's an American historian who tries to put history in a context where we can understand the crises that we face today. In terms of trying to understand these crises, President Obama, when he was campaigning, talked about ending wars in Iraq, but it seems as though he's ramping them back up, talked about attacking Syria. You write about the Secret Service crises that the First Family and the White House have faced, and that you think that these are the warmongers who are really trying to send him a message. What do you mean, sir?
I would say that Obama was put into power by a group of people from the Trilateral Commission and so forth who thought that he was going to be much more obedient to them when it came to their demands for wars, surges, escalations, wider wars, and so forth, and that they're not happy with him. In other words, one of the main points that the establishment harps on is that Obama is not enough of a warmonger. Therefore, I would recommend to people, don't worry about criticizing Obama. Worry about counterattacking the people who are demanding the wider war. Somebody like John McCain, who is on record meeting with ISIS terrorists in Syria.
You have a photograph of him on your website meeting with those people.
And there's one of them he's meeting with a cannibal. He's meeting with the guy who cut out the heart of a dead Shiite militiaman or Syrian soldier in different accounts and pulled out his heart and a piece of lung and started eating it on camera. You can find that. McCain sat down. I don't know whether he got in there for lunch, but you can imagine, right? You're sitting down with a cannibal, a kidnapper, a guy who had 10 Shiite pilgrims that he was holding for ransom, threatening to kill them, maybe behead them. And then the caliph, he sat down with a guy who was at that time that he sat down with McCain, an Al-Qaeda terrorist on the U.S. wanted list, multi-million-dollar reward. He was at the same time Baghdadi, the head of the ISIS group, and he's now the caliph. He's Caliph Ibrahim, the emperor of the world, according to this group, and that's somebody that McCain has sat down with. So what I find amazing is that the Democratic Party could knock the Republicans for a loop in these elections if they exposed what McCain in particular, but also Lindsey Graham and others have done in the way of fraternizing with known terrorists.
Why won't they do that? Why won't they do that?
I guess it's cowardice. I guess they're afraid of this group, and one might well be. Let me just go back since we've had this question with the Secret Service, right? Why don't they work? The starting point of wisdom, I would say, is an article in the New York Times on October 2nd by Peter Baker. Some blacks see Secret Service as flawed shield for president. Now, here we have people of some note, right? Representative Elijah Cummings of Maryland, not far from here.
He was on TV today talking about how many people approach him who believe that exact same thing.
Right. We got Emmanuel Cleaver of Missouri and so forth. Now, their idea is that there's a race-based, racist component to the fact that the Secret Service doesn't protect Obama, and I think that's absolutely correct.
Well, he denied that today, though.
Well, I guess maybe he got some messages overnight too, right? Maybe somebody was on his lawn. I don't know. But this is now a climate of threats. Certainly, the threat of force is not far from the surface here in Washington D.C. But the thing I would point out is there's an animus against Obama. That's clear enough. There had been an animus against Clinton in the past. We could go through that if we had time. I don't think we do. But the thing I would point out is that when you look at these incidents, these are political statements. They are means of exerting political pressure on Obama. It's blackmail. It's to goad him to do things that the war party or the rogue network or this invisible government, secret government, parallel government, deep state wants. I'll just give you 3 examples. In December of 2009, right, Obama fresh into office, he's going to give a speech at West Point. What is he going to do about Afghanistan after a long review? In November 2009, we had these 2 adventurers, right, the Salahis, this couple, man and woman, waltz into the state dinner for Prime Minister Singh of India, right? So this is a message to Obama. You have no screen. Then Obama goes to West Point. He gives a speech where he says, I'm going to have a surge in Afghanistan, which they like to hear, and I'm going to have a date for pulling out. And this they didn't want to hear. And then right after that, we had this the underwear bomber, right? Christmas Day 2009, Mutalab, the underwear bomber, in the skies over Detroit, making Obama look all of a sudden very bad. And I would direct people to my website, tarpley.net. I followed the revelations. One night on MSNBC, Richard Wolff came out and said the Obama White House thinks that this terrorism was deliberately allowed. Somebody let it happen on purpose, or maybe made it happen on purpose, in order to discredit Obama and to create problems for the administration. That's a good one. I think it shows how they operate. Here's another one. This is the one we just heard about. On 11/11/11, November 11th, 2011, 7 shots were fired from the ellipse, 700 yards from the White House, and they hit the south facade, the Truman balcony on the south side of the White House, right, the one that faces the Washington Monument. 7 shots. A Secret Service supervisor says immediately, no shots were fired, and a maid finds the bullets and the damage several days later. Well, what's the context for that? On October 21st, about, 3 weeks earlier, Obama had announced a firm commitment to a total pullout from Iraq. War party, not happy. Then we have the 7 shots. And then after that, in the middle of it all, there was also this question, what I mentioned before, the airlift of jihadis and terrorists from Libya to Turkey and therefore to Syria, and their equipment. And if we look now at what happened this year has been an epic year because we've had the Syrian question, right? The war party, you can turn on one of the Sunday programs, Lindsey Graham wants to bomb Assad, bomb the Syrian Air Force, bomb the Syrian army. And in Ukraine, they're all screaming they want confrontation with Russia. They want Russia to back down. I think pretty soon, if things keep going in Hong Kong, we'll be hearing the same thing, confrontation with China.